The main reason Kirk Hammett left Exodus in April 1983 was because he got a sudden offer he couldn't refuse: joining Metallica to replace Dave Mustaine. Even though Kirk was one of the founding members of Exodus, the golden opportunity to join a band that was rising fast in the underground scene completely changed the course of his career. Full timeline of Kirk Hammett's move. 1. The phone call that changed everything. In early April 1983, Los Angeles-based Metallica was already in New York preparing to record their debut album, Kill 'Em All. But their lead guitarist at the time, Dave Mustaine, had hit a breaking point with alcohol addiction and aggressive behavior. Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield decided to fire Mustaine on the spot. On the recommendation of underground music manager Mark Whitaker, who also managed Exodus, Metallica called Kirk Hammett. Kirk took the call while he was sitting on the toilet, which has now become a legendary story among fans. They asked Kirk to fly to New York immediately for an audition. Kirk told the toilet story in a 1994 interview with Metal Hammer. He recalled, "It was April 1st, April Fool's Day, and I was sitting on the toilet. I got the call from Mark Whitaker, Metallica sound technician, and after I hung up, I was like, I can't believe I just got that phone call. Was that an April Fool's Day prank?" 2. A lightning audition and instant chemistry. Kirk scraped together enough money for a one-way ticket to New York. On April 11, 1983, the same day Dave Mustaine was officially fired and put on a bus home, Kirk arrived in New York. The moment he plugged in his guitar and started playing Seek and Destroy, Lars, James, and Cliff Burton knew right away that Kirk was the one. His fast, precise playing style, influenced by European bands like UFO and Thin Lizzy, fit perfectly with Metallica's thrash metal vision. 3. Fallout and tension inside Exodus. Kirk's sudden departure sparked anger and deep disappointment among the members of Exodus, especially vocalist Paul Baloff and drummer Tom Hunting. At the time, Exodus was just starting to break out in the Bay Area and was building serious momentum. Losing their lead guitarist and main creative force so suddenly felt like a betrayal. Kirk even said in an interview that his Exodus bandmates were so upset there was an emotional, near-physical confrontation because they felt abandoned mid-journey. That interview was with Metal Hammer UK in 1994. At the time, Kirk said, "I told the guys in Exodus and they were pissed. They were pissed. I remember Paul Baloff was so pissed that he poured a beer over my head. He said, with angry hurt voice, 'I can't believe you're doing this, Kirk,' then poured his beer over my head. I just took it. Yeah, I know. Oh yeah. But you know, I also left a lot of music with those guys. A lot of the music I wrote ended up on that first album, 1985's Bonded by Blood, and they recorded some other songs that never made it. I never said anything because of the way I left them. I always had guilty feelings about that." The big impact on both bands. Even though it was painful at first, Kirk's move ultimately became a hidden blessing for both sides. For Metallica, Kirk brought personal stability and a guitar solo style that was more melodic but still aggressive, helping complete the thrash metal blueprint that made Metallica one of the biggest bands in the world. For Exodus, Kirk's spot was filled by Rick Hunolt. Together with Gary Holt, Hunolt formed the legendary guitar duo known as the H-Team. That lineup created their classic debut album, Bonded by Blood, 1985, which became one of the cornerstones of thrash metal history. Over time, Kirk's relationship with the members of Exodus improved, and they still respect each other as fellow pioneers of the Bay Area thrash metal movement. Behind the popular story of the toilet phone call and the lightning audition, there are some deeper facts and intimate details that mainstream media rarely highlights about Kirk Hammett's transition from Exodus to Metallica. These real stories come directly from Kirk Hammett and Gary Holt in separate interviews. 1. the drug choice problem that split Exodus internally. In a more personal interview, Kirk revealed that the internal state of Exodus was already strained right before Metallica contacted him. The main factor was lifestyle differences. Kirk said that the other members of Exodus started using different drugs than he did. That difference in substance preference created a major social and communication divide between them. Because he felt the band environment was no longer conducive, Kirk saw Metallica's call come at exactly the right time a way out. In an exclusive interview with British GQ magazine, published in September 2018, he said, "I formed Exodus when I was 15 or 16 years old, and by the time I was 20 years old, we had been going through some personnel changes. There were some issues between me and the other guys in the band. They started doing different drugs than I was doing. It opened up a divide, and then the invitation to come join Metallica came, and I jumped at it. Things weren't so great in Exodus at that point, but they fixed themselves and they got it together after I left." 2. The goodbye night. From wrestling to beer over his head. Even though they were upset he was leaving so suddenly, Kirk didn't just sneak away. He gathered Gary Holt, Paul Baloff, and Tom Hunting in one room to tell them in person. That farewell night was full of mixed emotions. According to Kirk, his friend's reaction didn't end in a hostile brawl, but in an emotional release typical of young guys. The night ended with warm hugs, friendly wrestling on the floor, and someone, likely Paul Baloff, dumping a can of beer over Kirk's head as a symbolic send-off. 3. Passing the keys and the birth of a more brutal sound. Before Kirk left, Gary Holt was actually just a roadie for Exodus, who happened to be taught guitar by Kirk. Gary even joked that at the time his only job was hauling amps and getting drunk. When Kirk decided to join Metallica, he symbolically handed over the keys to Exodus completely to Gary Holt. Once Kirk let go of the creative wheel, Gary took over songwriting and deliberately pushed Exodus in a much harder, faster, and more aggressive direction, a more violent direction. It was this ultra-aggressive character that later gave birth to the iconic album Bonded by Blood. 4. Exodus guitar riffs that came along to kill him all. When he left, Kirk took with him musical ideas he had actually written for Exodus. Several solo sections and guitar riffs he had worked on while rehearsing in Gary Holt's garage ended up on Metallica's debut album, Kill 'Em All, especially on songs like Trapped Under Ice and on some solo arrangements that replaced Dave Mustaine's parts. Kirk admitted he was hit hard by deep guilt and regret for leaving the band he had founded back in high school. But he never felt guilty about taking those riffs with him, because he considered them his own intellectual property.